So, you're stranded on an island with nothing much more than a lighter and an axe. You just survived a pretty bad plane crash, and your last memories are of a stranger looking human taking your child. This sets the scene of The Forest. The Forest is a co-op survival game, published by Endnight Games. With the sequel coming out this year, I wanted to cover this game off in 2021 since I've been playing it recently. Now, it kind of reminds me of Green Hell. Obviously it came before Green Hell, but it focuses around survival, cannibals, and of course, a lot of nature. The game itself doesn't spoon feed you, but it also doesn't leave you completely in the dark. This is because the game itself provides you with a survival guide which helps your initial introduction into the game. But this game isn't a walk in the park. Luckily for you, you can invite your friends in on the adventure, and for me, this was one of the factors that appealed to me, especially since there's a lack of good co-op survival games in the market. So let's get into this review, but before I do, just a quick reminder to like a video as it does help me a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, so just to get it out of the way, since it's slightly a bit boring, I wanted to briefly talk about the setup and connectivity, especially because a lot of co-op games kind of fail in this department, and it can mean a difference between a good and a bad co-op game. Now, not to worry, The Forest does pretty much a good job at this. There was a few hiccups, which I'll go through at the later parts of the review, but in general, it's very easy. All you need to do is get the host to simply start the game, and then the players can join whenever. Kind of very standard for most Steam games these days. The only kind of major thing you're going to look out for is, in order to save a game, you have to build shelters. You can't just simply save the game normally. So you can't simply just drop out of your friend's game. So you have to build a shelter and then save the game. So it's advised that if you're playing with friends, make sure you communicate with them, make sure you have checkpoints or you have a bit of like a rest and you build a shelter together and all that stuff. So to be honest, it wasn't big of an issue, and for us, it was all good. Now, I've only heard about this. It's not happened as much with us. But I've heard people dropping out or disconnecting randomly, so I would probably just bring a few bit of materials as you get into the game to kind of build your shelters and do regular kind of checkpoints. So that's the only thing. I think setup connectivity for The Forest is pretty straightforward, so hopefully that covers it. Okay, so you're probably here for this part, the gameplay and the story, right? So let's get into it. The Forest is one of those games that you can spend countless hours on the game itself. If you want to rush the story, that's fine, but in my opinion, if you're playing with friends, just take your time. But let's cover off the story first. You start off being the unlucky/lucky survivor of a plane crash, only to discover you're the only one left and your son's taken away, blah blah blah, done its introduction. After that, the game kind of just throws you into the world. Unlike many other co-op games out there, in my opinion, The Forest story is pretty well done for what it's worth. You have a few different endings so it doesn't become stale. However, if you're playing with friends, it's probably better to play the game together in its entirety rather than splitting off, oh, I'm gonna play today, you're gonna play tomorrow kind of thing. If you pick up certain items in the game that are required later on, they'll need to go back to the game to grab them, which is why you should probably stick together for most part of the game. This doesn't mean you guys can't just split off and have a bit of fun for yourself. Just if you're doing kind of like exploration, you probably should just do it together. Its storytelling could be described kind of like a mysterious, hidden style where you need to pick up clues to come up with your own narrative conclusion. From crayon drawings that your son left behind to the remains of passengers that are now dead, it's up to you to come out from the situation alive. If you're like me and you can't solo horror games, The Forest is definitely a bit eerie, but manageable if you're with friends. I suck at horror games. That being said, my first taste of a quotation mark horror game was Dying Light, and honestly it was one of the best co-op games I've ever played. With that being said, this is why I gave The Forest a go after convincing my mates to try it as well with me. So for someone who hates horror games, I found it scary at times, but for the most part you kind of get used to it. There aren't that many jump scares and you're more likely going to be annoyed by cannibals than get into situations where you're panicking. And of course, you're with friends. One of the most awesome parts of the game are the cave systems. I actually think that the cave systems are one of the most well-designed parts of the game. They're not overly complex, but complex enough that you can still get lost, but also navigate quite easily through them. They're dark, and you're going to hear screaming, and that's a bit scary. But in my opinion, it is definitely something that most people can get through as long as you're with friends. If you don't like horror games, I would still try it out because just the one fact that you're playing with friends. However, I wouldn't try this alone, it does get kind of eerie. Okay, so let's go beyond the caves and let's go a bit deeper into the game. From base building, exploring, survival, tree houses and more, there is a ton to do in this game. The Forest has made sure there are co-op elements present to make it feel like you're not just playing a solo game in another world with other people. You can still share base with teammates and build it together, which makes the game more fun and less tedious too. In my opinion, the base building component in this game is pretty relatively clean. You can place stuff and it gives you a nice little transparent view of what it looks like, as well as what you need to do when finished building it. It does get kind of tedious building your base, so obviously doing with friends is easier. Each co-op player can contribute to your building like as if you're building a cabin in real life. You can each contribute materials and logs, for example, to a cabin so it's quicker to build. Now with crafting, I actually love the whole concept of crafting in this game. There are many recipes that you can combine items together to create new items as well as create base items. Most of it is pretty intuitive, such as adding poison berries, for example, to your weapons to poison them. I actually like how the crafting system works, and it feels pretty realistic when you take out that crafting menu and start putting things together. Now, with inventory management, it can be a pain, but everything defaults into one spot like your meats and skins or whatever materials. Just to quickly go over that, if you want to pass an item to a friend, it can be a bit annoying. That's because you literally have to put it into a small tray and then trade it over to them. It's not something you, for example, can just drop on the ground like in other games, so in my opinion this part is a bit clunky. Now to quickly go over the looting system in this game, it depends what you're picking up or for example what you killed. If you're killing an animal, for example, it uses a shared system, so if one person skins a rabbit, only one person gets the loot. However, in some cases like picking up unique items, berries and other loot, everyone gets their unique loot, so more than one person can pick it up. For me personally, I prefer having my own loot so I don't have to fight over others, so I like there's a bit of mix in both systems in this game. The Forest is such an awesome game, especially if you love playing survival games. It's really set the benchmark of what a good co-op survival game looks like, especially with newer games coming out like Valheim that's also set a new benchmark. Also, as someone who hates horror games, there are definitely some times of uneasiness, but with friends it's a lot better. I mean, everything with friends is better, right? In my opinion, I would definitely get this game, especially if you have a few friends to play it with. With Sons of the Forest coming out soon, this is probably the best time to get this game before all the hype with the new game comes out. Hi guys, thanks for watching. Please consider leaving a like and a subscribe. If you have any specific co-op games you want me to look at, or any type of gaming content you want to look at, just leave a comment below and I'll take a look at that. Thanks.